The email arrived while I was adjusting lighting for a corporate headshot. I'm leaving you for Vanessa. Already moved my stuff to her place. Transferred my share from our account. Don't try to change my mind. My hands remained steady as I positioned the reflector. My voice stayed professional as I directed my client's pose. The only indication that my husband of 10 years had just demolished our marriage via email was a slight tightening around my jaw. I waited until my client left. Her professional headshots safely uploaded to my cloud storage before typing my response. Understood. Take care. My name is Elaine, and at 37, I'd just received perhaps the coldest goodbye in history. But while Daniel was likely celebrating his grand exit, imagining me collapsing in tears over his betrayal, I was calmly backing up my client files and preparing for tomorrow's photo shoot. The signs had been accumulating for months. The late-night editing sessions that never produced actual work. The sudden password changes on his laptop. The way he'd begun obsessing over his appearance. New wardrobe, expensive haircuts, hours at the gym. All to recapture his fading youth. 4 months ago, I discovered an Instagram DM notification on his phone from Vanessa Vibes Only, with heart emojis, on a night he claimed to be working late. That same evening, I opened a separate bank account at a different bank. 2 weeks later, when Daniel suggested we consolidate our finances for simplicity, I agreed pleasantly while quietly transferring my photography earnings to my private account. The joint account he'd just emptied contained precisely enough to avoid suspicion, about 2 months of normal deposits. The rest was securely stored, along with detailed records of every questionable expense he'd made in the past year. My phone pinged again. Don't bother begging. Vanessa and I leave for Paris tomorrow. I'll send movers for the rest of my things later. Vanessa. The 22-year-old lifestyle influencer Daniel's marketing agency had hired for a campaign. I'd met her at an agency party, watched her laugh too loudly at Daniel's jokes, noticed how she touched his arm when she thought no one was looking, young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to think she was special. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd consulted 3 months ago when I'd found the hotel charges on our shared credit card statement. It's time, I said simply. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Paris? No rush. Let him think he's won first. Another ping from Daniel. I know this must be devastating for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little photography hobby to keep you busy. My little hobby. The successful photography business I'd built from nothing. The one that now generated more income than his mid-level marketing position. The one whose earnings I'd carefully kept separate from our joint finances. I smiled, thinking of the legal papers that would greet him upon his return from Paris. Let him enjoy his moment of triumph. I spent that evening in our house, my house, since I'd purchased it with an inheritance from my aunt, and kept it in my name despite Daniel's repeated hints to add him to the deed. Another fortunate instinct that had paid off. While organizing documents my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. Daniel looked so different then, before his midlife crisis transformed him into a caricature of his former self. These days, he wore suits too tight for his expanding waistline, tried desperately to connect with the Gen Z team members at his agency, used slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a man of 46. My phone kept lighting up with texts from him, each more condescending than the last. I've been planning this for weeks. Vanessa understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe find someone who appreciates your mature perspective. Already told everyone at the agency. They agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault really. I screenshot each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would appreciate his casual admission of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The last text caught my attention. BTW used our shared Amex for flights and hotel in Paris. Consider it my parting gift, LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. Ms. Winters speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Paris booked today. Hotel charges at Le Grand Paris. And I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The representative's professional tone couldn't quite hide her satisfaction as she cancelled the charges. Daniel and Vanessa would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated, their hotel reservation cancelled. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the studio space. I'll let you keep using it until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had any claim to my photography studio that I'd leased myself, equipped myself, built myself, while he complained about my obsession with growing my business and called it my artistic phase? Another buzz. And I know your camera equipment means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for my half, of my equipment that I'd purchased with my earnings, that I'd spent years upgrading piece by piece. While he called it excessive spending, I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow Daniel would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Daniel. What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel cancelled our reservation. Answer. Me. I silenced my phone and headed to my studio. Thursday was always booked solid with client sessions, and I had a new lighting setup to test. Life continues. Even when your husband runs off with an influencer, young enough to be his daughter. Around noon, his mother called. Elaine, dear, Daniel told us everything about how controlling you've been, how you drove him away. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while I edited a corporate portrait series. Did he mention emptying our joint account and charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card? Silence. Then, well, he said you left him no choice, that you'd been cold and distant. Martha. I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money. Or maybe the one where he mocked my age. Another. Pause. He did seem a bit harsh. I told him that email was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Martha. I've always liked you. But I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Daniel's family during proceedings. Proceedings? Already? Goodbye, Martha. By late afternoon, Daniel's sister, Jessica, was spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, Daniel and Vanessa were stuck at a budget hotel near the airport. Their Paris dreams temporarily grounded. He'd tried using his personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months. Another red flag I'd noticed. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given his admission of emptying the joint account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? Not yet, but he'll get the papers at his new budget accommodation. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's social media is providing excellent evidence She's been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about you." I smiled, thinking of my own documentation. A year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, text messages that proved premeditation. Daniel had been so focused on his grand escape that he'd never considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed with another text. "You think you're so clever, but I made copies of all your business records. Half that photography business is mine." I forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Daniel's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency hearing on Monday was everything I could have hoped for. Daniel showed up in his new, young wardrobe. Designer jeans too tight for his age. A blazer that screamed midlife crisis. Vanessa waited outside, her youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer presented our evidence. Methodically, Daniel's gleeful text about emptying our account, his credit card fraud, his documented history of hidden expenses. Each piece carefully collected over months of quiet observation. "Your Honor," Daniel's hastily hired lawyer attempted. "My client admits to some rash decisions, but Ms. Winters' actions have been vindictive and calculating." "Calculating?" my lawyer countered. "You mean prudent." My client protected her separate assets and maintained detailed records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive. That's smart business. The judge reviewed my documentation. The separate property deed to the house. The photography business registered in my name only. The careful separation of business and personal finances that Daniel had always complained about. "Mr. Winters," the judge addressed Daniel directly, "you admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I was just trying to make a clean break." "By committing financial fraud." The judge raised an eyebrow. "And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets. The business grew during our marriage." Daniel's lawyer tried again. "My client is entitled. The business was established before the marriage," my lawyer interrupted. "And Ms. Winters maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every penny invested and earned." I watched Daniel's face as reality started sinking in. He thought this would be easy. Empty our accounts, run off with his girlfriend, maybe claim half my business in the divorce. He'd never bothered to understand my insistence on keeping things separate. Had mocked my careful bookkeeping as paranoid. "The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct," the judge announced. "All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Winters is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. "But that money's gone," Daniel protested. "We spent it on—" "Then I suggest you find a way to replace it." The judge cut him off. "And, Mr. Winters, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours." Outside the courthouse, I heard Vanessa asking Daniel about their Paris plans. His response was lost in the sound of my heels, clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he'd never understood or respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Daniel. He tried claiming the photography business had been his idea. He remembered investing money in its early days. He even suggested he'd been my creative partner all along. Claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records. "He's getting desperate," my lawyer observed. His girlfriend's social media shows they're staying at her studio apartment now, apparently living on an influencer's income. isn't quite the glamorous escape he imagined. Daniel's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. "We had no idea," his sister Jessica admitted. "He told us you'd been cold, controlling, that he needed to escape. But then we saw his texts. The way he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew," his mother called. Again, this time in tears. "The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. My photography business thrived. Ironically boosted by local gossip about my situation, women started booking sessions specifically to show support, often purchasing larger packages than they'd originally planned. My ex tried something similar. One client confided, while booking a premium branding session, thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Daniel, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. "You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support." I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Vanessa was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed exciting during secret hotel meetings felt different in the harsh light of reality. She posted about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes yesterday, my lawyer mentioned during an update call, and removed her relationship status this morning. I almost felt sorry for Daniel. Almost. But then I remembered his LOL. After telling me he'd emptied our account, the casual cruelty of his comments about my age, the way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else. Pride. Pride in my foresight, in my quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from Daniel's imagined triumph. Gone was his cocky attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Vanessa was noticeably absent. She'd moved on to a fellow influencer her own age, according to social media gossip. Daniel had shown up in his old clothes, the designer wardrobe, apparently returned to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented separation of assets. "Your Honor," Daniel's lawyer attempted one last time. "Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support and moral support." My lawyer interrupted. "Like these text messages belittling Ms. Winter's business as a little hobby, or these social media posts calling it her artistic phase." The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. Daniel got his personal possessions and his car, which was worth less than he owed on it. "You've destroyed me," he hissed as we left the courthouse. "I'll have to move back in with my parents." "No, Daniel, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too." His mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house, his new home at 46. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my age was now living in his childhood bedroom, while I continued running my successful business. "You planned this all along," he accused. "You knew this would happen." "No, I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records." His mother stepped between us. "That's enough, Daniel. You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her start in on him. "Honestly, what were you thinking? A 22-year-old, emptying bank accounts, sending those horrible texts." I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but relief. Daniel had thought he was writing the ending to our story with that cruel email. Instead, he'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed, not with texts from Daniel this time, but with notifications of new booking requests for my photography services. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he'd imagined. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my photography business had expanded to include 2 associate photographers under my brand. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Daniel struggled to rebuild his life, the little hobby he'd dismissed was thriving. I'd hired an assistant and launched specialized fine art portrait services that were gaining recognition nationally. News of Daniel's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He'd tried dating apps, but found women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his history through industry gossip, steered clear. Vanessa had apparently warned her influencer friends about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she'd left. His career suffered too. The agency's HR department had launched an investigation into his relationship with Vanessa, who had been under contract with the company, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion he'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with clients. He tried to claim age discrimination, Jessica told me during an unexpected visit to my studio. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. HR just added that complaint to his file. I was surprised to see his sister in my studio, but her presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly Daniel had alienated his own family. "I know we didn't support you at first," she admitted, examining one of my framed photographs. He played the victim so well, but watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. My lawyer kept me updated on Daniel's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied. His claim of unfair distribution dismissed based on the evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his text about emptying the account was just a joke. She told me, laughing. The judge asked if LOL made theft less illegal. The photography business's success brought unexpected validation. Industry magazines wanted to feature my work, not as a scorned wife, but as an innovative photographer who'd built a thriving brand. Young photographers asked for advice about separating business and personal finances. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me of Vanessa. And always trust your instincts. Daniel's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He'd tried crypto investing, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. He'd gotten involved with a coaching scheme that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions. But he's still blaming everyone else. You, Vanessa, the agency, the judge. I listened politely, but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a new studio space and a possible expansion into photography education. The only reminder of Daniel's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. His final text before I blocked his number. Have fun with your little photography hobby. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Below it sat my latest industry award. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my new expanded studio, Space. The event attracted local media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a successful photographer expanding her brand. Daniel's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Vanessa unexpectedly walked in. She looked younger than ever. Or maybe I just felt that much stronger. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her designer purse like a shield. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I believed everything he told me about how you were cold, controlling, how you didn't support his dreams. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on me when things got tough. I continued arranging a display of portrait samples. Those weren't his dreams, Vanessa. They were escapes. There's a difference." "I know that now." She paused, then added, "He tried to move in when you froze the accounts. Thought my studio apartment would be temporary. After 2 weeks of him complaining about my starter apartment and suggesting I ask my parents for money for a bigger place, I understood what you meant about the difference between dreams and escapes. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess. He had big plans, but no way to fund them." "Exactly. Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off. Once he got that promotion, once his screenplay definitely got purchased. He had a different get-rich-quick scheme every week." She shook her head. "I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a small apartment, but at least we're building something real." After she left, my assistant whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I replied. "That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did." Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a young couple examining my portrait packages. "Let's talk about your idea for expanding our wedding photography services." The photography business had become more than just a career. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young photographers often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of protecting their assets. Daniel's mother called one last time. Not to discuss Daniel, but to thank me. "You taught our family an important lesson," she said, "about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty. Daniel's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems. But we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them." I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a photography workshop series. Daniel had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Daniel filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. "Thought you'd enjoy that," I smiled, thinking of him in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. 2 years after Daniel's cruel email, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful creative business. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Q&A session, a woman asked about keeping business and personal finances separate. "My husband says I'm being paranoid, that marriage means sharing everything." My ex-husband said the same thing, I replied, right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce. Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. My photography brand had grown to include a team of 5 photographers, each more successful than the last. The little hobby Daniel had mocked now employed 12 people and had been featured in several national publications. Through mutual friends, I heard Daniel had finally moved out of his parents' house into a small apartment above a garage. He'd had to take a lower-paying job after his former agency downsized, eliminating his position during restructuring. His dating profile still listed him as young at heart, though his profile photo was clearly outdated. Vanessa, ironically, had become a client of my photography business. She'd earned her marketing degree and started her own social media consulting company. "You inspired me," she told me once, showing how a woman can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises. I kept Daniel's cruel email framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original studio, I stood, addressing my team and loyal clients. The space had been transformed from a little photography hobby into the flagship location of a thriving visual arts empire. Daniel's mother attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. "I saw Daniel yesterday," she said, smoothing her dress, one she'd had photographed in my studio. "He was talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still doesn't understand that he didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that email. His casual cruelty, his assumption that I would crumble without him, how he'd expected me to beg, to break, to prove him right about my desperation. Instead, I'd built something stronger than before. Each new photo studio location was a testament to what women could achieve when they stopped dimming their light for insecure men. The young photographer I'd hired last month, coincidentally also named Vanessa, came over with a question about the new booking system I'd implemented. As I explained the process, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a framed photograph. I saw what Daniel had failed to see 5 years ago. Not a woman getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more successful. His cruel email had meant to be an ending. Instead, it had been a beginning. Not just for me, but for every woman who heard my story and realized she deserved better than someone else's midlife crisis.